listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. To hear the full show each day, tune in to AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN or log in to accesswdun.com and click the Listen Live button from 9 to 11, Monday through Friday. Joining me right now is Steve Moore. Lots of things are happening very quickly, and it looks like President Trump is getting the cooperation he needs to be able to implement not only his security part of his agenda, but the economic part of his agenda.
Well, good morning, Martha. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
I did.
By the way, I don't mean to be a name dropper, but I was at Mar-a-Lago last night and did see the president, and I got to tell you, he's in just awesome spirits. He kind of walked in the room with a little jig, and he's just on top of his game. So it's an exciting time, don't you think, for America right now? I mean, in anticipation of this new administration that is going to do so much to change the direction of things.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So what? There's a lot of talk. People are trying to scare people with tariffs. People are trying to, and when I say people, I mean the left-wing media.
Of course.
And nobody's watching them anymore, so I don't know what impact they have. So what are your thoughts about how the economic plans are rolling out?
Well, first of all, I forgot to congratulate you because, remember, I've been telling you for months that the fate of the Western world rests upon your shoulders. Because I knew if we could win Georgia, we could win. And when they called Georgia, I knew we had it. So thank you to you and all your listeners. I know people did yeoman's work. This was a real team effort to deliver this incredible
and bigger and better than we thought it could have been.
Yeah, it sure was. And by the way, Trump did better with Latinos. He did better with middle class. I mean, almost every group. You know what? One demographic group he did worse with?
What?
Rich, white, overeducated people. But working class people, Hispanics, Asians, I mean, it was really an amazing thing. Okay, so I still haven't answered your question about
That's all right.
That kind of thing. So, look, you've known me for a long time. I'm a free trade guy. I'm not a big fan of tariffs. I think, when two countries trade with each other voluntarily, by definition, they're both better off. And we benefit from low-priced products coming in the United States, and they benefit from being able to sell to us. But let's take, for example, this tariff that he's talking about with respect to Mexico and China, and to a lesser extent Canada, to keep out these the deadly drugs from our country. Did you know, Martha, that the leading cause of death of young people right now is fentanyl and other lethal drugs?
Yes.
And this is killing our citizens and our kids. It's so tragic what's happening. And we know that Mexico, most of it is flowing through either Mexico or coming in through China. They are enabling, and they're not doing anything to stop these drug cartels. And they could be doing more. In other words, so I think Trump is right. He's saying, look, we're going to slap you with a tariff until you get serious about keeping our citizens from this, what is basically a chemical warfare against the United States. So in this case, I'm for this. I am. And I think, what's going to happen? I think Mexico and China are going to cave into Trump and say, okay, we will be more cooperative because this will save lives.
I hope you're right about that because it is poisoning. I'm glad you called it fentanyl poisoning because it's not the same as, taking a drug. And it's not like it was, not that I was never a drug experimenter, but there were a lot of people in the 70s who were. And it's not, you can't do that anymore because you don't know what you're getting.
It's not marijuana. I'm in favor of legalizing marijuana, but we're talking about drugs that people are overdosing on. They get hooked on the drugs. That ruins their lives. It can kill them. No, we can't allow that to happen. We can't have a whole society where our teenagers are hooked on these, horrible, horrific drugs. So, and by the way, I do think Trump will be effective in this, and the Mexicans can do more. The cartels are so powerful in Mexico. It's awful.
So it's interesting, too, and I've been watching a lot of Tom Homan related to the immigration issue. And what I like about, of course, the left is painting him as, the mass deportations was the phrase of the week last week. But here's the thing. he's talking about a very reasonable path. He says, first, we're going to get the 1.5 million or whatever it is that already have deportation orders, which means they've gone through our process. They've been legally adjudicated, and they're supposed to be deported, and Biden wouldn't do it. So that's legitimate. Right. Then criminals, then look for the children that are missing. Yes. I think that, I'm kind of a 3-thing kind of person. There might be 20 things you need to do, but you have to start out with the most important 3 things, and then you go on from there.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, I think you nailed it, my friend. I think that, look, I think immigrants are very, as you know, very important for our country, but so many of you get rid of the undesirables. And not everyone who came into the country illegally is undesirable. In fact, most of them just come in to get a job.
Yes.
But the ones that are criminals, or the ones who are drug runners, or the ones who are potential terrorists or from terrorist countries, or the people who committed crimes in our country, they have to get out. We have to evict them from our country, just like you would evict them from your home. And so that is the priority. And then, what we have to figure out, and I don't know the answer to this, Martha. I mean, smarter minds than I can figure this. What about, people who are working, who are not breaking, their only law that they broke was coming across the border? Do we want to deport those people? I don't think so, but, I know that you can't just keep allowing people to come in, because then the legal system just gets abused so much. So, but let's start with the worst first. Get rid of the people who are dangerous to our country.
So I like to look at things in kind of 50-year cycles. And 50 years ago, roughly about 50 years ago, Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon, and I would argue did a very selfless act so that America, this is a Kamala phrase, turn the page, put Watergate behind us, and go forward. And arguably, it ushered in about 25 years of amazing growth in the United States of America. It started out slow with Carter, but then from Reagan, and then Clinton was the last kind of reasonable Democrat. He kept most of the policies going, and things were fabulous until about 1999, 25 years.
That's right.
I think Biden, with the pardoning of Hunter Biden, I mean, I don't know if he'll pardon Trump. Maybe he will, but I think that along with pardoning the J6 folks, that will put that whole chapter behind us, and that we can set ourselves up to have the kind of growth that we had 50 years ago.
I don't know if I entirely agree with that. Look, I do agree that, I think Jerry Ford was absolutely right in pardoning Richard Nixon. We didn't have to go through that. The President Nixon was already shamed, beyond belief by being impeached and so on, and having to leave office. But here's my problem with the Hunter Biden thing. And by the way, I think Trump should have been the one to pardon Hunter Biden. Look, there's a term called nepotism, and folks, look it up if you don't know what nepotism is. It is using a high office to benefit your family. And I do think this is an act of nepotism, and I think it smells bad. And I think you are right, though. You know what would be the ideal outcome to me, Martha, and I wonder what you think about this. I think Trump, right now, I think Biden, if he's a stand-up guy, I don't know if he is or isn't, he should pardon Donald Trump. Nobody cares about any of that stuff anymore. Why have a new president without having to deal with these legal issues, And then I think Donald Trump, and I don't think it should be a formal agreement, but then one of the first things Donald Trump should do is pardon Hunter Biden, because we don't have to go through that anymore either. So what do you think about that as a solution?
Yeah, I think that could work too. I mean, no doubt about it.
That's not going to happen now, though, because Biden has pardoned his own son. And,
I love it. Our Eric Erickson called this the "if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor" moment for Joe Biden. Like, the biggest lie he told was that he wasn't going to pardon his son. And I think what it's also interesting, and I was thinking about this too. Everybody wanted to call Donald Trump as the existential threat, right? But he is not the shatterer of norms. He is the shatterer of systems that the left and the media put in place to benefit their own kind. That's
that's right. And I have to say something about Joe Biden. I mean, I just think he will go down in history as one of our worst presidents. I really do. And I think, remember, it was almost exactly 4 years ago. Remember, Joe Biden gave that famous speech where he said, it is time for our country to unite, and we have to unify our country. And that's something Americans wanted after 4 years of COVID and all the turmoil. And he came into office. And can you name one thing, seriously, one thing that Joe Biden has done in 4 years to unite the country?
Nothing. No, all it was is a hard left turn. We've got the power. We're going to impose that power, whether it was, the stopping the building of the wall, letting in all these illegal immigrants so they would vote Democratic, and then the massive spending spree, the massive inflation, all of these policies, the crazy transgenderism were so outside the norm. It split the country right down the middle. And so, I think it's important that the history books get this right. Joe Biden was a totally failed president, and the vote wasn't just a vote for Trump, and it wasn't even a vote against Kamala Harris. I think it was a vote against Joe Biden's crazy policies. Yeah, I mean, you forget the first thing he did. He put 20,000 people out of work at the Keystone Pipeline.
Oh, God, yeah. I forgot about that. But who does that, right?
I mean, the first thing he did was put 20,000 people out of work.
Right.
I mean,
no, it's a perfect example of, and I just, because I saw last year the esteemed historians in this country, which are all at left-wing universities, they rated Joe Biden as like one of the top 10 presidents of our time. I'm like, what? Really? And by the way, they say Barack Obama was one of the 5 greatest presidents, and then they ranked like Reagan like 25th or something like that. So it just shows you how crazy some of these academics are. But look, I think Donald Trump, if he has a successful second term, which I believe he will, I think he could go down as one of our most successful presidents ever.
I agree. Steve Moore, appreciate you being with us today.
Have a great week.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Mark Matson is joining me right now. He is the CEO of Matson Money, which is a seasoned financial institution managing $11 billion in assets. His most recent book, Experiencing the American Dream, is a must-read, and we appreciate you being with us today. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great, Martha. Great to be with you.
So I want to talk to you about your book for a minute before we get into the economy and then the size of government. Those are the things I want to talk about today. I have children from 33 to 43, and they're all doing pretty well. They're all gainfully employed. They're all doing well, doing things they love, all of that. But I just had Thanksgiving. All my kids were there. They are really not in the belief that the American dream is possible for them. That the American dream, which I believe is you do better than your parents did. It doesn't mean you get rich, you know what I mean? But that you have more opportunities than your parents. Talk to me about that and how that relates to the book that you wrote.
Yeah, Martha, I totally get that, and I think that some of the younger generations are feeling that way. I usually tell people, look, there are 3 types of people: people that just have the American dream as part of the DNA of their very soul. People that don't really know. They think maybe in theory it's possible. And then you have the American dream critics and haters who not only think the American dream doesn't exist, but it never existed, and it's based on greed and avarice. And what I tell people is the American dream isn't an amount of money. It's not a size of your portfolio. It's actually a screen by which you see the world. And that screen is based on freedom and personal responsibility and going out and creating value for other people and never, ever expecting to get anything that you didn't earn and create value first. And it's the exact opposite of victimhood and the opposite of entitlement. And my dad grew up in the hills, and I was born in the hills of West Virginia, and we got to see 2 different worlds, the world that my dad created out of entrepreneurism. He read Think and Grow Rich and then gave it to me when I was 10 years old. And then you saw the people in the hills that were largely victims of their circumstances. They didn't have actual chains on, but they had mental and psychological chains that kept them stuck. So the American dream is for everyone. Everyone can attain it, but it's only one generation from dying because it has to be passed on and taught to the next generation.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Reagan said about freedom, right? If freedom has to be earned in every generation. The American dream has to be taught. And, my dad was a guy that didn't finish high school but went to fight in World War II, came home, took a few classes at NYU in marketing and did what, was a great salesman throughout his career and did a great job providing for us and having us be the first generation college kids that went on to do well. We're self-employed. My husband and I are self-employed. We own some businesses. We've got several things going on. We're kind of, he's a physician, but he's always been self-employed. He's always been a solo practitioner and he's kind of a dying breed, but it's worked for us and that's been great. But then my kids are all well-educated, doing well, got great jobs. And I think they're just kind of in the throes of raising families, and it's really hard to get your head up and see the whole picture sometimes when you're in that. But I think they're going to be fine. But especially my youngest child, my 33-year-old, she really feels like it's hard out there for her. Housing prices are just ridiculously expensive. They're still renting. She and her husband are still renting. And their goal this year is they've saved what would in a normal world be enough money for a down payment. They've saved and they're ready to go. And I hope they buy that first house this year.
Well, that would be a great thing. And if you look at surveys and you ask people what they want inside of their American dream, home ownership is huge. Having a family, children, having the ability to have a nice retirement someday, find just financial security in general. And you're absolutely right. It's harder today than even it was 4 years ago. We've had such massive inflation. Interest rates on homes were in the 2.5 to 2.7 range before Biden took over, and the inflation started to go crazy. Now mortgage rates are 6-7%, and I can remember in 73 and 74 when mortgage rates were up to 12%, 14%.
Yeah, my first house was 13% in 1981. Yeah. So yeah.
But it's easy. We have a quality of life here until you go to other countries and you see a country like Russia or Venezuela or Cuba or Iran or North Korea. I mean, you look at these countries and they're just living in total poverty and total totalitarian regimes. And you won't really get a feel for what the gratitude and the opportunities that are here in this country. Even if you only make $50,000 a year, you live better than the King of England 500 years ago. You have medicine, you have entertainment, you have health care, you have all kinds of technology. And it's easy not to be grateful. And if you want to get a good sense of gratitude, get in an Uber and talk to the Uber driver. And a lot of times they'll tell you, hey, what country they came from and how grateful they are to be here.
We're talking to Mark Matson, and he is an entrepreneur. He owns Matson Money, but he also has written a bunch of books. I love this one, The Dirty, Filthy Lies My Broker Taught Me. I think I haven't read it yet, but I just might. Although I have a great one. We went through this situation. I'm 65, my husband's 70, and about 10 years ago, we lost our lawyer, our broker, and our accountant in the same year. They passed away. And I'm like, okay, it was like turmoil. But I went with really young people. Do you know what I mean? Like we got people that we know we're going to outlive. And now we have a nice new team of people that help us because I know what I don't know. I'm not the person to manage my own money. And I don't mean that I'm not smart enough or any of that. It's just that I need help with that. You know what I mean? Because I don't have the detail-oriented nature to be able to do what needs to be done to follow all that stuff. I know what my goals are, and that's what we have worked towards, and we've been blessed. But my husband's always been self-employed, so every dollar we have, he has earned or earned interest on. And that's very freeing. When that happens, that's very freeing.
Right.
Now,
yeah, that is the American dream.
That is. So economy, let's talk about the economy. You mentioned it. That's been the biggest thing. And what I told somebody yesterday, they said, oh, it's so much bigger of a mess for Trump coming in this time. I said, yeah, but I believe in the American people. It turned negative quickly. It can go positive quickly also, because half of the battle, Mark, is that Americans feel good about the economy, then they go out there and take risks. If they feel good, then it moves much quicker.
Well, it absolutely does. And, when the election happened, you can see the optimism and even the turn in the market. Since Donald Trump was elected president for his second term here, the S&P is up 5%.
Yeah.
Since he was elected, but the small value stocks are up in the range of 10 to 12%. And so it's already been a great. And there are some months, Martha. There are some months when the market makes 20% just in a month. So things can really take off, and you have the entrepreneurial spirits. You have lower taxes for corporations, which would be excellent. He's talking about taking it down to 15. You'd see a lot of factory jobs, a lot of manufacturing come back to this country. He's talking about cutting personal taxes. But we also have to work on the other side of the equation. You got to get this Department of Government waste going here in efficiency with Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk. And we've got to get this national debt under control.
Now, that was going to be my next question, the size of government and the impact of that. And, my theory is, I don't love Rand Paul, but he's got a great idea on this, that you go back to 2019 spending, you adjust it for inflation, which would bring you up to about $5.4 trillion. We're spending $7.4. So that number that Elon Musk is throwing around at $2 trillion is not that far off as far as what the waste is. And you got 80,000 federal jobs open right now. The average cost of a federal job is $125,000. If you just zeroed those out and forced the departments to reorganize based on who they had, you could save money tomorrow.
Well, we got to get the government back to what it was designed to do, to protect your rights, small government, protect the country, the sovereignty of our country, protect our borders, and protect us from wars of evil powers overseas, like Iran and Russia. And so, these are the basics of government. The American people will grow the economy. Entrepreneurism will grow the economy. Dr. Art Laffer, who worked with Ronald Reagan, his economic team is on our academic board. And he's really clear about this, that if you let people work and create value and money, the tax revenue base will actually go up. But when you put your boot on the throat of American people, if you're making anywhere from $200,000 to $400,000 or up a year, you're easily paying half of all your money, Social Security and Medicare taxes and federal taxes, state taxes. It's easy to be half. And then if you die, it's easy to pay another half on your estate plan. So they take half when you earn it. They take 20% of capital gains when you get it. Then they take half when you die. I mean, it's a very confiscatory nature, and it's an assault on capital. And this new president, Donald Trump, I'm sure understands what entrepreneurism and knows not to attack capital and let capitalism work.
So have you followed at all this farmer strike that's been going on in the UK? Have you followed that story at all?
I have not been watching that closely,
okay.
No.
It is an amazing story, and you'll love this one. Okay, so it used to be, or it still is, that if you have a family farm and you're still farming, and there's a lot of people in the UK and in the United States for that matter, that they're on the land they've been living on for hundreds of years, and it just gets passed down and they're all farming. Well, what the new government wanted to do was, if you had more than $1 million in land, then you... £1 million, you'd have to pay tax on it. And it used to be tax-free. And so, and I mean, in the UK, when you got 70 million people living in the size of Georgia, the state of Georgia, land is expensive. So getting to £1 million of land, not very hard. So they had tractors and trucks and farm equipment descend upon London 2 weeks ago. And they brought food with them to give to all the food banks. And they basically said, if you do this, we're going to stop. We're not going to produce food anymore. And they brought the government to a standstill. And I loved it. I loved it that farmers would get up and do that because, it does make perfect sense that if you've kept a family farm in the family, I mean, we have the same kind of issues with inheritance tax here. If you keep it in the family, you shouldn't have to pay tax on it every time it changes hands.
Well, absolutely, because it destroys wealth. Look at our own country. If you're an entrepreneur, you work hard, you grow your business. Let's say your business is worth 50 or 100 million, and you die. The government comes in and they want roughly half. Well, people don't just have half of that money in cash. Therefore, they have to sell the company at a fire sale, and all that intellectual property, all the employees, all the infrastructure gets destroyed, and the company basically dies when the next generation comes. And it's a travesty. The estate tax is absolutely heinous. A capital gains tax, you've already paid tax on that money. People want to tax the same money 2, 3, 4 times. And if we can start to get away from that and let people invest their own money into equities, into bonds, into the market, you're going to see a lot of prosperity for people, and the American dream will start to be revived.
Well, and we got to make sure the Democrats don't get their hand on your IRAs, because what they want is to take them over and give you an annuity. And, Obama tried to get that done. Biden tried to get that done. And, one of the greatest vehicles for wealth for the average person has been to be able to have an IRA. And I think that it's, we got to protect those things. Mark Matson, if people want to know more about what you do, how can they find out?
Yeah, you can grab the book, Experiencing the American Dream. You can grab that on Amazon. If you want to learn more about the company, you can just go to matsonmoney.com.
I appreciate you being with us today. Thank you for your positive message.
Thanks so much. A lot of good things coming for America.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
Right now, we got Ron Hart on the phone with us, and he is at the Daily Caller Foundation, or did go to the Daily Caller Foundation dinner. How are you, Ron?
I'm doing well. Yeah, Vivek spoke, and the new senator from Indiana, Banks, is doing a breakfast thing right now. So this sounds re-energized, Martha, for the Republicans coming in.
Yeah, so were y'all talking about this CEO being murdered, the United Healthcare CEO?
Oh, we didn't go there last night. Vivek's talked about DOGE, his Department of Government Efficiency and what they plan to do there, and how, you saw it when you were here. Basically, the government's run by a bunch of bureaucrats that are permanent. Congressmen, senators come and go. They seem almost hesitant to even, ask them to do anything. They don't testify when you bring them in. And there's going to be, hopefully, wholesale change.
It's funny, Doug Collins, who I ran against in 2012, when we were talking about term limits in that campaign, that's one thing he brought up that I think he was absolutely right about. Both of us supported term limits, but he had the point where he said the problem is not with the Congress people, even though they do need to have term limits. The problem is with the bureaucrats, because the bureaucrats, if they know you're term limited, they can wait you out. I mean, if their plan is to work in this department for 40 years before they retire, they'll wait you out. And they'll just continue to do what they want to do, as opposed to what's best for the country. And
Banks said today. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, what Banks said today is, I asked him. I said, why you get mad about something? You say, well, I wrote the Pentagon a letter. Okay. First of all, did they respond? Well, no, they didn't respond to it. But I wrote them a sternly, worded letter. What are we, 1942? Hey, what are you doing? And then if they don't respond, what do you do to them? He said the only thing you can do is cut their funding, and they know you won't do it. So they just wait you out. It's
funny. When I was working for Riches, I worked for a guy named Steve Pernato, who was a really good merchant. And this is back in the day of memos, the 70s. You remember that. You'd have a conversation, then you'd write a memo and send it out. And he always said the first 2 he got on a subject, he just threw them in the trash, because he knew that if you didn't take the time to follow up 3 times, you didn't really care about the issue.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, maybe so. I don't know. But the DC's broken. They've got to cut this. We can't afford $36 trillion in debt and growing. Fundamentally, no one comes into work. The buildings are empty. The streets are empty here. It's just sad.
Let me ask you a question. My biggest concern I got no problem in theory with people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy heading up a department or heading up a commission like this. My problem is both of them have government contracts. And I think, and I don't know how they're handling this, but I think during this period of time they're doing this, they either need to step away from those government contracts or there needs to be some kind of firewall between them and the government contracts that they get. That's my only concern.
Yeah, I guess so. But, they're talking about reducing or getting rid of the tax credit for electric cars, right? That's right in Tesla's face.
Yeah, that's
I'm not
true.
sure that – I think these guys got so much – Vivek's a billionaire, and, of course, Elon's the richest man on earth. So I think they're just Maslow's hierarchy of need right now. They're at this self-actualization point where they really want to do something for the country. I don't think they're going to do incrementally things for themselves. If they do, the liberal media will point it out. So far, they're talking about getting rid of the EV tax credit of $7,000, and that would just directly impact Tesla.
Well, it should be interesting. So how long is this through the weekend for you, or are you going home today?
We fly back tonight. I got a couple of more meetings today. Tucker's in Carlson's in Moscow. He didn't make it this year, but his son Buckley's here, and it's been fun. It's been a good group of people. The Daily Caller does a great job of doing news. I think it's a new formula for getting news out there. The traditional model's broken, as we've seen, and they've got some intrepid reporters that have done some really good work.
Absolutely. Ron Hart, thanks for being with me today. I appreciate it. To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.